Hello ladies and gentlemen, Joseph Mogel here. Got some more tips for you writers out there. This time I want to cover some contract law. Now, I know, contracts, boring, not fun, but important. Any story you publish, whether you're publishing through a publishing house as in an anthology, magazine, whether you're publishing flash fiction, short story, novella, novel, you're going to deal with a contract. Every publisher has them. And if you want your story published, you're going to have to sign it. That's not necessarily a bad thing, though. See, contracts, while every publisher has a contract, all their contracts are different. The exact responsibilities kind of differ from publishing house to publishing house. One thing you find when you're dealing with any type of a publishing house is that generally they'll let you know what's going to be in the contract. Again, read through that submission page. One of the things they're going to list is they're going to list rights, payment agreements, and other things that you will find on your contract. So most publishers, and I'm going to address this mostly to people who write short stories right now, because when you're dealing with novels, you're going to deal a lot more with like contract negotiation. And I'll get to that in a minute. Most people write short stories, though. It's a fact. And some of the greatest writers in world history wrote primarily short stories. James Joyce, Oscar Wilde, Edgar Allan Poe. Yes, they wrote book-length works, but most of what they wrote was, in fact, short stories. So short stories have a tendency to be this butter zone. It's not too long, it's not too short. It's not so short that it's flash fiction where you kind of zip through it in 5 minutes and go, well, I'm bored now. Or a novel where you're investing months of your time into the work. It's something you can complete in a week and has some oomph to it, some guts. So most people have a tendency to write short stories, and consequently most people have a tendency to try and publish short stories. There are a lot of novels, journals that publish short stories. There are also a decent number of anthologies. Now, when you submit a short story, or anything for that matter, you will generally see on the website of your publisher a list on the submission page of what rights the publishers relinquish and what rights they keep. They're going to let you know in advance pretty much what's going to be in the contract. They're not going to give it to you verbatim. Occasionally, in a rare instance, you will get a sample contract. I've seen this once or twice. It doesn't happen too often, but it does happen. Even when you don't have a sample contract, though, keep in mind, if you read through the submission page, beginning to end, you will know exactly what's going to be on that contract. Now, one of the things you'll probably notice is that as you go from publisher to publisher, what rights they relinquish and what rights they keep changes from publisher to publisher. And this changes for two reasons. One, each publishing house is a little bit different. They're looking for different stories. The editors are different. They're more comfortable working with one type of a contract clause as opposed to another. But there's also individual state and country contract issues to consider. And I say state and country because nowadays with the internet, you can submit a story in English to almost 5,000 different publishing venues globally. So let's say you live in Vermont, right? You can submit a story to England, Australia, New Zealand. There are even English language publishers in Japan, China, and Russia you could submit to. There are publishers in England, and Scotland, and Ireland that publish in English, as well as all 50 U.S. states and all U.S. protectorates. Each one of these places has different contract laws. Now, this isn't something that you're going to have to deal with too much when it comes to short stories, because pretty much regardless of the country, state, commonwealth, county, district, whatever, the laws regarding short story publication pretty much the same. There's not too much variation. There's some variation, keep that in mind, but not too much. It's where you get into a novel length work that this is where you want to start having a familiarity. And this is where Google is your friend with different contract laws. So if you're in Vermont and you're publishing through a publishing house in Canada, and you know where the publishing house is located, look up the contract laws. Review them on Google. It'll give you a pretty good idea of exactly what you're going to be getting into. The other reason for this is with a short story, you're probably not going to do any negotiating. Okay? The reason is simple. If you try and haggle, they're going to go, well, we're not going to publish your story because there are 5 other people who want to get their story published in this anthology or this magazine, so we can just kind of go, you're gone, and we'll just take the next person and put them in where your story was going to be. So you generally don't haggle with short stories. you don't really need to know too much about the contract law with short stories. But a novel, publishers are going to publish a novel. Now they're saying, we like this, we want this, this is a whole book. We're not just going to go whoosh and take the next guy because the next guy's novel might suck royally. But if we're going to publish yours, we know it's good, we want it. This is where know your contract rights. This is where you want to have a familiarity with the contract law in the state, county, district, country, protectorate, whichever place it is. Have a familiarity with the law in that particular area so that you can negotiate. Negotiating is going to happen when it comes to a novel. It's not going to happen with a short story. It's not going to happen with flash fiction. Might happen with a novella. Novellas aren't too terribly popular. Most pieces are either short stories or novels. That's the facts. The vast majority are short stories and novels. Every now and then you'll get a novella, and that's going to be more up to the individual publishing house because they might treat a novella more like a short story because it's generally on the shorter end of the spectrum. Well, if we're not going to publish yours, we're just going to take the next one. Or it might be more like a novel where, we're really picky about our novellas. We're going to only publish really good ones. So that's going to be more up to the publisher than it is up to the individual contract law. Either way, if you're publishing anything larger than a short story, be familiar with the contract law, the area where your publisher is located. It just saves you time and grief in the long run. All right, that's all I got to say for right now. This is a part 1, bear in mind, because I'm going to go over more on contract laws in my next video, where I'm going to actually get into some of the specifics, rights, payment scales, things along those lines, and give you some more information about what to expect on a contract. And this is going to be mostly geared towards short stories, but I'm going to try and pull in some elements with novellas and novels as well, so you get a smattering of exactly what to expect on an actual contract. So if you've never dealt with a contract before, this will give you a good heads up. All right, you can like and subscribe. If you have any questions, I have an email address so you can get to my channel. I also have a hyperlink to my webpage, should be in the description below. My webpage has my email address as well. So if you have any questions, email me. I will get back to you. Thanks, and cheers.